What up, Nick?
Yes, sir. What is going on, Mr. Fems?
What is happening, my man? I'm chilling, bro. Blessed, living. I'm here. You already know the vibes, bro.
That's it. Back for like another episode. It's been a long time since we've actually jumped on the mic, just us two.
I know.
Can you deep that the last time we did that was like what, last year in August?
That's crazy. It's been a good time away.
That's it. That's crazy. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or you were talking some smack.
Yeah,
that was definitely not a compliment.
No. I hated doing these. I hate these and this, but you know. But now we're getting paid for it, so it's different.
Who's paying us?
You're paying me.
Oh, I'm paying you.
Yeah. It has to be. Yeah. So
now talk to the people. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, man. Well, look, I think this topic is super relevant. It's something that we've been talking about for a long time, and it's something that's like we get asked about a lot. And I want to just make a quick little disclaimer, right?
All right, go on.
All right. Look, yes, I know a lot of stuff. Yes, Nick knows a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Are we relationship coaches?
Oh,
no.
You know what's crazy is that we know that relationship topics bang. Every time we talk about relationship topics, it bangs.
Facts.
But then, like, when people actually start talking to us one-to-one about it, I'm like, now we're actually talking about your
relationship, about what I should do. What should I dump him? I don't know.
I don't know. And to be honest, like, any decision that you make off the back of this podcast advice, it's entirely up to you.
Disclaimer alert.
We are not liable.
Hey, if your life goes to, if you take an L and you dump the wrong guy because of us, or you date the wrong guy because of us, hey, that's on you.
I swear to God, if you didn't come to us one-to-one and we're not your therapist, then like at this point, I can't help you.
Hey, look, this is not relationship advice. This is literally just us having a conversation about a topic that's relevant. Hopefully you can get some kind of information and knowledge from it to make your own decisions in your own life. But as you can tell, talking about relationships.
That's it.
So I'm really excited because I think that this topic actually, so if we take away our, flippant side and we talk a little bit seriously, this topic's really, really relevant because I think that relationship is something that we do all the time and it's one of the hardest things to navigate, especially guys and girls our age, right? When you're in your mid-20s.
Mid-20s. We're talking to the teens, man. We're talking to you young adults.
I mean, that's crazy. If you're in your mid-20s, that's crazy that we're saying that right now. Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Damn, we old.
Damn, wherever the hill is.
And it's your birthday soon.
Yeah, I know. It's wherever the hill. Anyway, that's another conversation. But yeah, so look, if you're in your mid-20s, 30s, when you're in that young adult kind of like stage where so much of your life is kind of relevant to relationships. You're figuring out what's the best relationship to be in. How do I be in a relationship? Because you don't have much experience, right? You know what I mean? So it's kind of just figuring it out. Even when you've been in a relationship for a couple of years, that's not that much experience when you look at the people who've been in 50, 60-year relationships.
No, it really isn't. And there's a lot of pressure as young adults now that I think
to get it right.
Yeah, to get it right, get married, you want to make that decision. And it's, there's a lot of pressure. And then as a result of that, sometimes we feel forced into a relationship. We don't know how to navigate the relationship. Correct. We feel like I might have to settle in this relationship because if I don't settle now, then I'm going to be 30. And, all these kind of conversations start happening. So it's a very, very sticky situation. Yeah. But hopefully what we tell you in this podcast will help you navigate the complexities around it so you can make a lot much of a cleaner decision.
And specifically how to actually navigate it within the relationship, right? Because it's one thing to get into a relationship. Yeah. It's another thing to have a happy relationship and a lasting relationship and a relationship that you're growing in, right? Yeah.
So just to be clear, this podcast today, we're just going to be talking about when you're in a relationship.
Yeah, it's our role inside a relationship, all right? So especially, and this is especially relevant when you have a partner that is struggling. Yeah. And a partner that's having, that doesn't mean that it could just be going through a hard time to being diagnosed on medication. There's no extent. I mean, it could be any kind of extent. Yeah. So it's about being able to help and be that person. And what role do we actually play in our relationships to make sure those relationships are thriving and fruitful? Yeah. So obviously, like the first kind of question that I want to ask and kind of discuss with you, right, is like, well, why are relationships so hard? Like, why are they so difficult? Why do we suck at them, really? Because like, nobody goes into their first relationship and nails it. Yeah. It doesn't happen. And if you do, write a book. That's it. You know what I mean? Write a book because I want to read that.
Legit. No, I think it's a good question. And like, obviously, I don't know for the general population why it's sticky, but I can give you from my opinion and my perspective because I'm currently in a relationship. This is actually my first time in the relationship. Are you going to put a pressure button?
I'm not sure they changed the buzzers on the soundboard, so I'm really just guessing right now. So what have you guys hear next? Maybe hit, maybe not.
I don't know if that was the one, to be honest, because this sounds like I'm telling a story.
Oh, okay, let me try another one.
No. Yeah, no. All right, anyways, just hear me out.
Yeah. I'll make the sound first for you.
Yeah. Holy crap.
It's Nick's story time.
That's crazy.
Go for it.
I want you guys to give some feedback on that. If you guys want that to be like our intro or whatever, or you want Femi to keep being the sound, just let us know because we've been having a bit of a discussion about that.
Crazy.
And, it's not just me though. People have been telling me. But anyways.
So my soundboards.
Yeah, your soundboards are a bit like.
Hits.
Doesn't hit, but.
Okay. Who are you talking to?
I'm talking, it's confidential. It's a podcast. So I'll tell you offline.
Anyone that you're talking to is wrong. Facts.
Anyways, I think relationships are sticky. Going back on track is that for me, I feel like relationships are challenging because what we're navigating within the relationship is all about emotions, right? It's all about being able to understand the person's emotions. Like it's all emotional intelligence. And the thing about it is that because it's intangible, we don't actually know. So a lot of the times we jump in and we make assumptions based on not even how the person feels, but how that person made me feel. And then as a result of that, we start to act a different way. We're like, oh, you offended me, without actually understanding what the person's going through. We can just see it from our own kind of lens. And I think that's the challenge, right? Because we struggle as a generation to be generally empathetic with people and try to understand where they're at. And because of that big gap and that boundary, or not boundary, but that gap, then we don't know then how to respond. All we can focus on is on ourselves. We can focus on how this person made me feel. When you're doing that, it's like, okay, well, what about how I'm feeling? Correct. And it's that complication in the conversation, in the relationship that makes it really hard.
And that's a perfect point because oftentimes, even though you might have a relationship that's got great communication, you guys are best mates, yada, whatever. The truth is, most of the times when you're struggling as a partner or you have issues or concerns, and that might be that could be from your own mental health, or it could be just issues within the relationship. You don't tell them, you actually show them. Long before you have the conversation, you've been showing your partner what you're feeling. And it's important that when you are the person and in your role in a relationship as the partner, right, it's to be always watching and listening and knowing their baseline in whatever circumstance that is, right? And that should be something that we're doing in all different kind of relationships with friendships, family, professional, whatever, is knowing each other's baseline and watching for and listening for changes, right? Because that's what's going to allow you to really have those real conversations, safe conversations. Because it's one thing to be like, okay, I can communicate with this person, but it's another thing to feel like you can safely communicate. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean by that is having emotional safety in place that I can tell you how I really feel, not trying to get the message across as best as I can without offending you. Because those are two different things, right? Because it's about being open and honest and being like, look, this is how I feel, all cards on the table, and being like, oh, I kind of feel like you're not doing this to me, which it's not being completely transparent. It's just trying to have the conversation because as much as you can, because you don't feel fully safe.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And like, as what you were alluding to is that like, it sounds like a lot of this is going to come down to empathy, right? It's about us being able to kind of understand, be able to be like, okay, cool, I hear you. I've actually kind of express it. And I know this is a little bit off topic, but I'm curious because I think that even though people might have a degree or understanding of empathy, when it actually comes down to the table, when we're talking about communication and someone's like, I feel this and this is what I want, which by the way, that I feel I want is an excellent strategy to implement. But how do you, on the other end, I think what I've noticed is a lot of the challenges is that even though they're just expressing themselves, we still take a level of offense to it. And then this is when we start going through that troublesome period where we're like, well, I don't know why you feel that way because I'm actually not doing this. Or I'm going to be like, well, what about me? What about when you do this? This bothers me. And that's the big challenge that we have in relationships. Because as you were saying, it's all well and good, they're your best mates, they make you laugh, they do this, you have all this fun. But when shit gets tough and you guys are feeling uncomfortable and then you want to later, how do you receive it?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Because that's how to communicate it, but how do you actually receive it?
It's a really good question. I think that like as modern kind of relationship psychology or texts have been talking about, it's moved on from being effective communication to effective reception, which has been the more powerful kind of differentiator in being able to have fruitful and thriving relationships. So I want to take a step back in terms of answering your question. I want to unpack that with you. Where does defense come from?
Comes from trauma. There's a trauma, ego. Those are the type of things that I would look at it from.
When you get defensive, why do you feel like people get defensive? Why do you, like, your specific thing? Yeah. Why do you feel defensive? Why do you feel defensive?
So I feel like I get defensive based on two different things actually. One will obviously be the ego.
Yes.
I feel like, okay, well, you've struck a chord on my ego and I don't like that. So therefore, as a result, I'm going to defend myself. That's like what our body is designed to do, to keep us safe. So that's what I would do. The second part of that as well, that I think that why I kind of respond is due to a level of insecurity. Yes. If there's something that I was battling and, I feel not really safe around and it's been attacked, then, as a result, I'm going to defend myself. And those are generally the two things that people do to trigger me to get into that kind of defensive response.
110%. I think that you nailed it with trauma. And I think that we say this a lot, but it's so important to understand your trauma and do your own work about your trauma. Because if you're not healed, you can't have these conversations. It's going to be so much harder to have these conversations, right? It's kind of like if you have an open gashing wound on your arm and someone starts poking it, it's going to hurt a whole lot more. And you're going to want to punch that person in the face a lot more than when that wound has been closed up, there's scar tissue on it, and it's been completely healed. When they poke at it, you don't want to punch them in the face. You might be like, okay, I can understand that this may hurt, but I have a lot more time to respond rather than react. So in terms of being able to actually be a better recipient of feedback, news, communication, it means that we need to take a step back and do our own trauma work. What baggage do I have? What baggage have I brought into this? Why does this piss me off? Because when you have these conversations at the very beginning and the very, very start, they're going to be so difficult to have. Because chances are no one goes out and just preemptively and proactively usually does their own trauma work. It's usually when things go left, then you realize I need to do it. So usually when you're in a relationship with someone, then you've had these issues, they're unaware. So when you're putting it to their forefront, they're now aware that they have a wound. And also on the flip side, the person that's communicating needs to also be patient to understand that this person doesn't know. And give them the space to be able to heal and feedback. Give them feedback like, hey, look, you're not actually receiving this effectively. And what you need to do is actually go do your own work. It's going to happen. You're going to have difficult conversations, but the more you do this together is really important, because the main role in a relationship, and I think I've said this before, is your role is to set that environment and be a container. I'm going to talk about this probably a little bit more in this conversation, but it's to be a container for growth within that relationship. It's so important to be someone that is able to set that safe space for that person to develop and understand and move forward from their baggage, move forward from their trauma, and not feel attacked, not feel unsupported. Because when you're not receiving and I get pissed off at you not receiving, I'm also not receiving the fact that you're not receiving effectively. And it starts this spiral and this cycle, that never ever works out.
Exactly right. And I think that the big thing that you said that I really think is really, really important is that be able to provide that safe environment. A lot of the time we're in an element of just us feeling like, okay, we need to fix it, or we need to be able to solve this. We're too solution-based focused without being that person that can be like, you know what, I understand that you feel this way. Let me create this environment for you then to be able to do the inner work. Because at the end of the day, with any healing process or any healing kind of journey you take, I don't actually think that you reach a point of actually getting healed, because I think that this is a journey that goes on for the rest of your life. There's always wounds, there's always trauma, there's always things that are going to pop up, they're going to discover about yourself, which is really, really exciting. But at the same time, it means that there's so much more work that we need to do. There's so much more that we're going to discover about ourselves. And I think that instead of us being like, okay, well, how can we fix this as soon as it comes off? Because sometimes what a lot of people do is that they'll either just push it away, they won't even bother talking about it, and then it just shows up again in a different cycle. That's kind of the cycle of trauma. But if we can be like, well, I understand that this is the environment that I'm going to give for us, so we're able to then always do the work together and grow together, then I think that's the best thing that we can do in a relationship. And I think that's such a great role and a great honor and privilege that we play, which is actually exciting when you really think about it. to be able to be that person that can really aid in someone's emotional, spiritual, mental, and even physical growth.
110%. And I think that it's got to shift. The focus of the relationships have got to shift, right? It's got to be, and we hear this all the time, it's really, really cheesy, but it's true, especially when we're having someone that's struggling, especially when you're trying to facilitate growth. It needs to be 100%. It's not a 50-50 relationship. It's got to be 100%, right? And I know, as much as when I heard this, I was like, oh, what? Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh yeah, relax, bro. Relax, bro, Gandhi, bro, relax. Yeah, I mean, but like, in all honesty, it's so true, right? True. In terms of your focus needs to shift in terms of how do I have the best relationship and make it, and how do I make this person feel safe? Because the moment that person feels safe, a lot of the issues within your relationships shift because they're much more likely to confide in you, which means that you're going to learn about issues at an earlier stage before they blow up. They're much more likely to work with you in terms of being able to get the result. They're much more likely to be able to grow and develop and reach the goals and become the person that you want them to be as well. And you also be that person. So when you kind of focus and shift the focus in terms of not just how do I make them feel in terms of like loved, sexy, all those things that are super important, but primarily how do I make them feel safe? Because oftentimes as people, we associate safety with so many more emotions than when you realize. We associate safety with love. We associate safety with obviously protection. We associate safety with kindness, like so many emotions, right? Happiness. Safety. That's what we ideally want. Our brain is literally a safety mechanism. It's literally designed to keep us safe. That's why you have defense mechanisms, because you feel attacked. Exactly. So you respond because you don't feel safe. Exactly. So being able to constitute an environment of safety is so pivotal, especially in a relationship. 100%.
And I think that for the guys that are listening, it might sound a bit overwhelming. It's like, oh, I got to shift my whole focus. How can I do this? And the big thing to note is that it's not a process of being able to take it all at once, because remember, this is a relationship. This is someone that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with. So take it step by step. It's the same thing like any time that we're trying to change a habit. Like you see people that go to the gym, they change everything straight away. They shift the focus to be like, okay, diet, wake up at 5 a.m., do this. So many things that like eventually you'll be able to sustain it for like maybe a week or two, but then you're going to notice you're going to go back.
100%.
And that's the same thing that you don't want in a relationship. You don't want to set this kind of standard now. That's like, my role now is that I'm going to be your provider. I'm going to keep you safe. What does that mean? I'm going to do like 500 different things to do that. And then your partner's like, okay, cool. That sounds great. 4 weeks down the track, you're like, I can't sustain that.
Of course.
And then you go back, and that creates more turbulence in the relationship, which is what you don't want to do. So like Femi was saying, the focus needs to be clear. The intention needs to be there. And you want to be able to do it step by step, 100%. One thing at a time. And that can be as simple as having a conversation and just being like, hey, like,
this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is my intention. You know what I mean?
This is my intention. Exactly. I want to be there. And it's so funny because those simple things that people take for granted, like even myself, I take for granted, can mean the world to somebody that's receiving that. Just be like, you know what? I'm shifting my intention in this relationship. I want to be able to focus on creating an environment for us where we can grow together.
100%.
And it's like, fantastic. That's exactly what I want. And then like, obviously setting that conversation in terms is like a whole different thing about how that would look like. I won't delve into it too much. But I think that just that on its own and just saying, okay, cool, what do you want? What are your interests? And they're like, okay, cool. Understand that and then do it step by step is just setting you up for success.
100%. I think that the word that we've been using over the last kind of couple of minutes, super powerful, is intention.
Yeah.
And to be intentional in your relationship is actually really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we live in this world where it's almost like now it's uncool to really want to put effort into your relationship from like an emotional perspective. It's kind of, we romanticize the idea of this fairy tale, but the truth is relationships aren't fairy tale. Relationships are actually a lot of hard work.
100%.
And it takes a lot of intention. The same way that it takes intention for you to be healthy, for you to grow a business, for you to progress in your career, more so with a relationship.
Exactly.
And it's so good. It's so important, to be able to have that conversation with your friends, family, and romantic partner, but specifically we're talking about romantic partners right now, to say, this is my intention. I'm being intentional with this relationship. I want us to do this. Doesn't mean that you're regimented. Doesn't mean that you're living a military structured lifestyle relationship where this is what we're going to do at this time. It's more just saying, I'm just going to be more present and conscious and aware and trying to be aware of these things in our relationship.
And even saying things like, and I might probably struggle, I might probably go backwards so many times. And that's why I want you to be able to kind of support me and bring me up when I'm going down those stages. And I think that, like you were saying, so foundational, so important. And I think I would encourage everybody, if you haven't done it so far, go say that to your partner.
Yeah.
What's your intention in your relationship? What do you actually want for your relationship? And not from like a superficial kind of, oh, I just want to travel the world, I want to do this, even though those are all well and good, but what do you actually want from the relationship in terms of from an emotional perspective? And figure that out. That's the homework that I'm going to give you for this podcast before we take a break.
Yeah, we're going to take a break real quick, and we're going to go, when we come back, we're going to like go into a bit more detail and kind of unpack this a little bit more. I think this conversation is really interesting, and I hope that you guys stick around for the rest of it. So we'll see you guys after the break. Great. So thanks for purchasing our program. And if you haven't, I'm going to take another break for you to go onto the website and buy the program. The ad isn't just to sound nice. Run it. Rechargewellness.com.au. Get started.
Top right, please.
Yo, top right.
Please.
Hey, the lights are dimming, man.
Yeah. Nah, but we've obviously been speaking a lot about emotional safety.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that's the big role that we actually play in a relationship. But what does it actually look like?
Look, I think that we've had this conversation a while, and I've had a lot of I've had a bit of a think about this, because it's kind of like everyone hears it. I say it a lot. It sounds, conceptually sexy or conceptually intriguing, right? But I think the big thing when I think about safety in terms of a relationship, and the way to kind of make it practical and real, is, do they actually trust you? And I think that in relationships, we oftentimes associate trust solely with, are you gonna cheat on them? Are you gonna dog them physically? Are you gonna that kind of stuff, right? Which is so superficial and so surface level. But I think emotional safety comes in. Do they trust you to not just not cheat on them or whatever, but do they trust you to listen to them, to actually hear them, to have their back, to support them, to be there for them, to protect them emotionally, to be all of the things that are so intrinsic to them? Do they trust you on that level? Because the moment that they trust you on that level and they feel safe, that's when all these things can actually happen. Because the level of growth that you're expecting your partner to have requires a lot of trust and a lot of safety for it to happen, because you got to be vulnerable. You got to be comfortable to stuff up. You got to be comfortable to make mistakes within that container of the relationship. And if they don't trust you to have your back, it's a concern, because they're not going to take those steps. And it's so many times like you see it in those relationships where it's like, oh, just taking it from like a superficial level. It's like, I really want to, do piano lessons or whatever it is, right? But they don't want to, because they don't trust that their partner is going to back them and support them and hear their needs, hear their concerns. And they're scared that their partner is just going to look at it purely financial. We can't afford it, blah, 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 blah. Instead of really hearing what they're saying. So they don't even try. They don't do the things that make them happy. They don't engage in different tasks. And when they go into this like wallowing of feeling like, I'm not living my life for me, I'm living my life for other people. And that becomes very dangerous. And if we look at it from an emotional perspective, they don't grow. They don't develop into the person. They don't learn the skills that are necessary to be able to be their best version in a relationship.
That's so good. And like, I think the big question then becomes, well, how then, if we know that, or we've identified, because what you're asking right now is for people to do a lot of internal work and ask themselves a really serious question. Like, do you actually trust this partner? Yeah. And, obviously a lot of that can be flawed and impacted because of how maybe the relationship started off. It might have not been healthy, but it doesn't mean that you still don't love and care for them and still want this to work. But what you've now done is that you've kind of posed the question where people can be like, I actually don't feel like I trust my partner right now. Maybe I am actually living for him and not myself. Yes. This isn't like a blended kind of relationship right now. So if people have gone back and they've asked themselves that question and been like, and the answer is, no, I actually don't trust my partner. Yeah. What do you do?
So that's a big question and a big process, because just because you don't trust that partner now doesn't mean that you can never trust them. Doesn't mean you never trusted them, right? Trust is something that is earned and lost. So it's something that is, you have the option to be able to really, work on building that trust the same way that you can look at building trust if they did whatever, cheat or doing something different, right? It's probably different to that, because trust is, when that's happened, trust is actually being broken. Maybe this trust has been established. So I think that you've got to really have that conversation with yourself primarily, but also have that conversation with that partner, which is obviously difficult because you don't trust them. Exactly. You know what I mean?
If you've told me that, I'm like,
primarily, what? Exactly. So primarily the thing that you need to do actually is have a conversation with yourself. And that's something that is actually really, really challenging. And the process is really, really challenging, because sometimes the answer could really just be, well, I don't ever see me being able to trust this person because of X, Y, Z, and these qualities and these traits and these things. And I've given this person an opportunity to show that he's someone that I can trust. But if the answer is you can never trust them, then that's a big question that only you can answer as to whether you want to, what you want to do with them. And I think that that goes into a very, very, very interesting point that I want to touch on in terms of I still love that person. And I think that this is a very controversial point. And this is just my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want in your life. But I'm a big believer that love is not the only thing that is necessary for a relationship to work.
Oh, jeez.
That's
crazy.
Love is entry fee.
Yeah.
Love is the entry fee for you to be able to have a relationship. Because you see so many times, tough times come when you love this person so much.
Yeah.
But you need to be safe emotionally. You need to trust this person. You need to have so many other things in place to have a thriving relationship. Love is entry fee. Of course I gotta love you. How am I supposed to want to develop all of these other things that allow us to have this thriving relationship if I don't even love you? But on the inverse of that is if I've only got love, I don't have anything else. Anything. It's problematic.
So what are the other things that you're referring to?
In my opinion?
Because I agree. I think that obviously love isn't the only thing.
Yes, correct.
Love is a prerequisite. It's going to help you a lot and allow you to sustain the relationship.
It's the only thing that's going to allow you to do it.
But it's you've just got love, then it's well,
I love a lot of things.
Exactly right. But obviously people can be okay, well, let's define love. And that becomes a whole kind of different conversation. And that could include the things that you might say are missing. So it's a completely subjective, I guess to anyone that's listened to it, it's it's
completely subjective.
Exactly. What do you define love as?
Yeah, people have different definitions.
But obviously this is our podcast, so it's just about
Exactly.
us.
You're not on, if you got an opinion, hire out your own studio. Run your own mics.
Exactly.
Right now you're looked into Nick and Femi's podcast.
Exactly.
Right now,
listen to what we think.
Exactly. So based on what I think.
Exactly. What are those other things that are missing?
I think there's a massive array of things, right?
Yeah.
Of things that are relevant to making a relationship successful. I think obviously, like I said, trust, safety, growth. I think that you've also got to be aligned in terms of values. I think that you've also got to be a lot of different things, and then that's conceptual stuff. I think that if I start listing things from a practical level, it's gonna be
shivering. You're probably looking at me I'm shivering.
Hey, you guys, if you're listening to this, I'm just looking at this guy just shiver and literally he's shaking the whole room right now. It's crazy.
I told you, buy our program. It's cold. It's cold.
We don't even have heating. It is crazy right now. So, hey,
please
buy a program. It's very affordable. It starts at as cheap as $30 a week.
Please.
Come on, guys.
Please.
How many times you spent $30 on some other stuff?
Saving easy.
Saving easy foundation, bro. Come on. But long story short, I really, really think that there's so many things and it'd be hard for me to start listing them. But the ones that I've said are some of the major ones I've come to the top of my head. And I think that it's really, really good to self-reflect. And I think that what we were saying before is going to challenge people. And I think that it's important that in a relationship that you are actually challenged to really vet yourself as to, well, why the hell am I with this person, first of all? And just because you've started the relationship doesn't mean that, you're not locked into anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? if you're married, that's another conversation that you need to, probably go through a different process. And I'm not saying anything in terms, I'm not encouraging anything. I'm just saying.
But still, even if you are married, like
this is your life.
This is your life. I feel like this process is still very relevant, 100%. Even if you are married.
Because the thing about it, because at the end of the day, what do you got to be selfish about? No. You gotta be selfish about your future. You've got to be. That's if I can give you one learning that I've had in the last few years of my life, is you need to be so selfish about your future.
You've got to be. And this is a crazy one, but it's true.
It sounds really so bad, but I'm telling you, don't get it twisted. At a drop of a hat, that person, that whatever it is that you think that you're living for, given the opportunity to dog you for their future, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do it.
Well, I think that's what usually happens, right? That's what 100%. We see. You know what I mean? Like, that's why divorce rates happen, right? So I realize that.
Saying it. You gotta realize, what is really, really happening in my life right now? And what's my future looking like with this person? Exactly. And especially if you're only dating them or whatever it is, and you feel like, there's so many things about the thing about dating, and the thing that I think that is broken in the dating realm. I think there's so many issues, right? But the one thing I think that is interesting about the dating realm is that we establish this level of expectation for it to transpire into something, into marriage, into lifelong stuff. And the truth about dating is that you're literally just on trial, bro. Like, it's a soccer team, right? Yeah. It's a big contract that you're trying to sign. You're trying to sign a big contract, bro. Yeah. You're on probation. You're on trial. You're trialing with the under 23s. You're getting the cup. You're getting some game time. You might even get some first team game time. If you haven't signed pen and paper, blood. The moment that I realized that you're not the one for the team, you're not fitting the system. Like, I might have thought that you were amazing at the first trial. The first opening, I would have thought that this guy was Messi himself. But when it comes to push comes to shove, you've been tested on the trial game. You've been tested in the system. All these things aren't working out for your way. As a club, I'm a dickhead if I sign you. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's true.
But right now, we're treating as if just because you did the first trial, I have to be there for you. You have to be my captain. You don't,
you
bro.
Really don't.
You really do not.
It's interesting though. But I think that when I wanted to play devil's advocate a little bit when you were talking about the love thing, but like in the interest of time, and I know there was other things we wanted to cover, we probably can't even cover now because of the time spent.
But let's have this. If you want to have this conversation, we can run it and cut it into whatever. But if you want to,
no, that's all right. We'll do it like this. I'm not scared. There's no fear there. But
that's Nick's heart right now, bro.
But I think that this is even more interesting than where we were gonna go, to be honest. So, especially in terms of dating, right? But not even there's two parts. But I'll start with the first part. Correct. When we just on track with dating. Actually, no, I won't. I'll go back to love. So we were talking about, obviously, love is just an entry fee.
Correct.
But an entry fee to what? Go on.
To your life, to having an opportunity. So I'm talking about entry fee in terms of you having a relationship with that person. Yeah. And being committed and serious to that person. Yeah. The entry fee has got to be love for you to start wanting to build something with that person, right? So you wanting to build a long-lasting life, a long-lasting kind of whatever, lack of a better word, empire, right, with that person. Yeah. The entry fee for that has got to be love. Yes, I know that you don't love someone instantaneously. To be able to want to build that entry, to be able to want to have that kind of long-term plan and development with them, right. That's what that needs. That's what, in my opinion, that's what you need.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about, because it's not instantaneous. Of course. Obviously, that comes back from, we were given the example about the dating. It's like, of course. You're on trial right now. Yep. And what we're trialing is, do we align? Yes. Our values and goals, the exact way we need to go. Do we have that emotional connection? Do we have that safe container that I can be for you? And if so, then bang, this prerequisite of love has been achieved. Yes. I would kind of visualize that.
Correct.
So are we saying then, just going back to that statement, that once you've achieved love and you've gotten to that point, then what other stuff needs to kind of follow? Like those other things that I know that you were going to allude to, but I'm just curious now.
Like I said, I'm not a relationship coach. This is purely from my...
this is all it is. It might be controversial. It might hurt people. People that are like, I wanted to date Femi, but now Femi's seeming quite unachievable. I don't know.
No. To be honest, the thing about it, it's not unachievable. It's just I think I've just broken it down in a way that seems systematic, and when things are systematic, it sounds slightly intimidating and confronting because it thinks that it needs to go in that regimented way. It doesn't have to go in that regimented way. It's more just an explanation of the idealistic way that think,
we want this to go.
But like life isn't ideal. You know what I mean? So, but I'm just saying, in an ideal world, right? So.
Actually, disclaimer. You actually did the craziest disclaimer just then for yourself. That's crazy.
Cuz.
Pretty much just saying, hey, G, if anything goes left, like we said at the start, it's really on you.
It's on you, bro. It's so on you, bro.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Yeah.
I guess if I was to spitball, right, I think that my opinion on what your question is, if I'm understanding your question correctly, right, is the things that need to come with love and come after love and to establish a really, really sound relationship is what I said earlier, is in terms of like, you need to have aligned values. Yeah. Your morals and your values need to align. And I think that's something that's really important that is kind of overlooked is likes and dislikes, right? Because sometimes, again, this is just my opinion. Now you're just talking about me being my personal self, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that you've got to have aligning likes and dislikes. Not the same. There's a big difference. Aligning, right? I can't like praying and you like sacrificing animals to the devil. You know what I mean? Not aligned, you know? Like not aligned. Doesn't have to be the same, but they need to, like, our likes and dislikes can't be directly oppositional, which goes into values and morals and what we believe, obviously. And then, so I also think that obviously you need to have a level of trust, security, you know, your lifestyle has got to be conducive to my lifestyle, or be willing for us to be able to negotiate. I think there's some, and another thing that I also like, I might just tell them about things that I want and what I like now.
That's pretty much what you're saying, but like, no, let's not go
I was
all the
going
way
to say,
there.
I'm like, damn, what the hell is this?
No, but I was really, the reason why I asked you that question is because you obviously said, going back to saying love is an entry fee.
Yes, correct.
And then we would spit and bone, I was like, okay, well, how do we get to love? Because it's not instantaneous.
Oh, is that your question?
And it's like, well, there's this. So is it more that, not that love is an entry fee.
Sure.
But it's like love is something that, if we summarize that love includes all those things that you were talking about, then is it just a matter of just sustaining it then? It's not a matter of like having other things that need to follow. And I know this is just conceptual, but just because I'm quite a conceptual guy, I like things to kind of make sense.
Yeah.
If we're saying that love is all of these things and it doesn't come instantaneously, but once we've covered all those things, then we've achieved love, then it's just something that just really needs to sustain.
I think that we're putting this in an unfair box because the complexity of love and relationships is far more abstract and far more is far more vast and then the 1+2 example that I gave, right?
Exactly right.
I think it was the example that I gave was really, really an oversimplified version of what I mean. And what I mean is that don't think that to be able to sustain a relationship, all you need is love.
Yeah. And
it's not, because you can love someone. We see it so many times. You can love someone that is bashing you. That doesn't, like, you can do whatever you want in your relationship, but as professionals, right, like, we've got to make sure you're safe, right? If you're like a healthcare professional, we can't just say, okay, someone's, you know, if you're in a DV relationship, and I don't mean this to be triggering to anybody, right? But you could be in a DV relationship, and as a healthcare worker, I can't know that and support that just because you love the person. Yeah. And then we see that a lot of the times where they really genuinely do love the person.
Of course.
And you can have and even if it's not DV, but someone that hurts you and isn't supportive and isn't aligned to you and there's so many other stuff, right? It becomes problematic to encourage someone to be there just because of love.
Right.
And I think that what I mean that is that, yes, love is great. Love is essential. Love is what you need. Love is so good and love is great, right? But it's not the only thing. It's not what's going to sustain you in the long run. There's so many things. And if you are a religious person, it's very important, right, to have someone that aligns, to have someone that you can date whoever you want, right? But you want to have someone that aligns with your values, your beliefs, and whatever that is, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to be the same religion. You can do whatever you want. But I think it'll be problematic to have someone that has conflicting belief systems to make that work. And these are just the views viewed and shared by Femi alone. So don't even come at Nick. If you got an issue, you can slide in my DMs and we can have a conversation, right? Because I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm just saying these are my opinions.
Yeah, but I agree. Like, I think that some of the opinions that you were saying, especially when it comes to like values and opposing likes and dislikes, I think those are very, very valid, regardless of whatever your subjective view is. I think that there's a lot of people that can learn from that, right? Because so many people are concerned about, oh, he likes R&B, so do I. Yay, that's a perfect fit. But it's like, well, you know, what are your values?
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, a lot of the time, we come into relationships not even knowing what our values are. And that causes a lot of, obviously, disruption in the relationship because we're still trying to figure it out, but we've also set like unrealistic expectations of what this relationship is. And that's what we see. Some people 5, 10 years down the track, they realize like, actually, this is what I really care about.
Exactly.
And now this relationship doesn't make sense anymore.
Exactly.
So I think that's the really, really most important part. Obviously, likes and what you guys care about and like your hobbies and stuff, they're all obviously important. We're not saying that they're not important, but like, I think the crux of it is your values.
Yes.
It's like, what do you actually genuinely care about? And it doesn't mean that you need to have like 10, 20, 30 different values. I think that the best way to look at doing it is by just dropping it down to like 3 or 5. What are your 3 or 5 values?
Why not 4?
3 to 5 values.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? Because what that forces you to do is that it forces you to be really real about the values that you set. Because you can write down anything. You really can. But when you ask yourself, when you have to narrow it down to 3 or 5, then there needs to be significant meaning behind it.
And I think that like this conversation is definitely taking a turn that we didn't intend it to do, but I think it's valuable anyway. Yeah. And I think that in terms of your value, especially in a relationship, is really, really being critical and honest, right? In terms of not what I like the idea of, but what do you spend your most time on? What do you spend your most time putting in effort with? What do you develop? What are the things? If you say that, oh, I really value being outdoors, but you haven't been outdoors in 6 years, maybe you don't really value it that much.
Or maybe there's a bigger reason why you've been outdoors because maybe your partner, the relationship that isn't congruent to that, like you were saying.
Perhaps, yeah.
Who knows?
And it's like, yeah, I mean, and just different values and be honest with yourself. Like, what actually is your values? And there's no shame with having values that aren't, kind of traditionally, quintessentially perceived as positive and good. If you don't value your family, whatever, bro. Like, do you know what I mean? I swear to God, whatever, dude. Like, if that's not your value, then that's not your value. Don't lie about it.
Exactly.
And then try to build a relationship based off family when this person's because you're not gonna understand it when somebody loves their family and you don't love not that you don't love your family, but you're one of your core values isn't your family. It's gonna be so problematic.
Bro, imposter syndrome.
Bro, facts.
Facts.
Because you're not gonna get it. You're like, bro, we've been to your mom's house 3 times this week.
Yeah, why?
And
you know what's even crazy is that you might even be able to sustain it, but like deep down, you're gonna realize this is so exhausting.
So exhausting.
So then even if you go in and you do those things that are lying, like everything, it's gonna start presenting itself in different ways.
Bro.
In so many different ways. And that's where the big problem comes later in the track. And I do want to say quickly that even though these values that you set now, remember, a lot of this conversation that's targeted towards is around like young adults. Yeah. And we're still trying to figure ourselves out as young adults. Facts. It doesn't mean that your values can't change.
Yes.
Values can change.
Yes.
And don't feel bad about your values been changing because whatever we say now doesn't mean like, yep, for 50 years, this is who I'm going to be. It can evolve. Just like your partners can evolve as well.
100%.
And that's why Femi was talking about. If we were to tie it back to what we were talking about in this podcast, it's all about being that safe container and allowing that space for growth and involvement. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. And we're always on track. We always knew what we were doing.
We were always on track. We knew what we were doing, baby.
Nah, but like, it's so true. Having been that safe container is going to allow for growth to happen. Which is the be all and end all. Cause like when it's safe for that person to be different and grow and evolve, it doesn't cause as much trouble, as much tension because it's safe. That person's got your back. It's okay to have, it's okay to be the different person.
Exactly.
So anyway, long story short, I guess the best way to wrap this up, right, is to basically just say, like, your role in your relationship is so important. You play such a pivotal role. You're so influential. You have the ability to be able to make or break someone's life, which is a very, very big big statement to make, but it's the truth, right? And it should be an honor and a deep responsibility that you take seriously when you're dating someone. 100%. And I think that it's something that you need to really take seriously in terms of being really essential, being really intentional about trying to keep that person safe, and allowing that growth to happen, and being that person that you want to be, but also making it safe for that person to be the who they want to be.
I love that. And I think that what I do want to say is that with this podcast, and especially with this season, we really want to be able to support you guys in your growth and able to improve your mental health, improve your relationships, improve all these facets of your life. And the best way that you can do that is that it's not just about listening to us and being like, yeah, oh, sweet, let's go back. But it's about actually really taking the time to do the work, taking the time to ask yourself these questions. Especially when we talk about relationships, like relationships is like you're making a decision for the rest of your life, essentially.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might even get to the resolution that I actually don't want to be in a relationship, and that's cool as well, because we've touched the roles and the responsibility that it takes so much.
Date yourself.
Exactly. But the big thing at the end of the day, like what I'm trying to allude to, is that you guys just got to do the work.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any questions, any feedback, any comments about anything that's been said in this podcast, or if there's any way that we can support you, because I know that we're going to be doing a lot more episodes that's going to be tailored towards you guys and what you guys want. So we're going to definitely have that coming this season. But for the meantime, do the self-work, ask us the questions. We're more than happy to support you as much as we can in this journey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So aside from that, I mean, that's basically it for this episode. I hope you guys love it. Leave a review, leave a comment, do the usual things. Come on. Let's get us to number 1, baby.
Let's go.
You know, I'm coming for Jay Shetty's title, man. That's what we're doing.
Got it.
You got it.
I believe in us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Well, look, peace and love. I'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Uncovered Podcast with Nick and Femi.
Now.